So tell me, because you guys are young and these guys are they're older than you, some even much older than you, are you able to negotiate when it's time for engaging in sexual intercourse to use protection? Are you able to say, to insist that I want to use protection, or they?
Yes, I am. I'm able to negotiate whether I want to use protection, because they are much older and I don't even know at their age whether they have slept with how many people. So like, yeah, I'm able to negotiate.
Okay, does it work all the time?
Yeah, sometimes it does not work, but I just have that condition. It's either that or nothing. Yeah.
And with you?
To be honest, I don't just sleep without using a protection. Yes.
And with you, dear?
I use protection.
All the time?
No.
Sometimes you don't use protection?
No.
Okay.
So according to the United Nations Populations Fund, every day in developing countries, 20,000 girls under the age of 18 give birth. Now this amounts to 7.3 million births a year. And if all these pregnancies are included, not just births, the number of adolescent pregnancies is much higher. Now complications from pregnancy and childbirth are the leading cause of death amongst adolescent girls. Now almost 20% of all women who die in childbirth in South Africa are teenagers, even though they make up fewer than 10% of mothers in the country. Now, adolescent pregnancy is generally not the result of deliberate choice, but rather a consequence of little or no access to school, information, or health care for these young girls. Now, Reproductive Health Awareness Month is recognized annually in February. The Department of Health has embarked on various educational activities on reproductive health, such as contraceptive use, family planning, and pregnancy awareness. Now, it aims to raise awareness about the importance of contraception and the prevention of HIV and AIDS infection. Today, we focus, therefore, on contraception and pregnancy. We'll be joined in studio by a specialist obstetrician and gynecologist, the Director of Women and Maternal Health from the National Department of Health, Director of HIV and AIDS and STI Prevention Strategies, also from the Department of Health, a representative from IBIS Reproductive Health, and an ambassador from Mom Connect. Now, we also are joined by a studio audience made up of young guys who I'm sure have lots to say about this topic today. You maybe want to become part of the panel by asking, if you want to be part of the show, of course, by asking the panel some questions. The number to call is 714-6918 or 6919. You can also tweet us at SABC Health Talk, or simply just interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk. So sit back, relax, and learn from this bumper show ahead, coming to you just after a short break. I'm Dr. Silom Tau, and this is Health Talk.
MedShield Medical Scheme, we don't just talk health, we do health. SMS MedShield to 33023 or talk to your broker to get your kind of care.
We cross live, give updates and cover sport.
The observer missions, what are they saying?
It will be a very difficult announcement to make, to say whether these elections have been free and fair.
1 in every 100 people are diagnosed with arthritis daily. In an effort to raise awareness, a handful of elderly women, they took to the streets of Soweto to stretch their fight against the ailment.
Western Province upset the Sharks by 33 points to 21 to be crowned the 2017 Currie Cup champions at the Kings Park Stadium.
In Durban.
On time with weather every hour, all the time. For all news, stay tuned to AM News every Saturday and Sunday at 10:00 hours Central African Time. Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles.
I'm willing to do anything.
What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
A warm welcome to one of your favorite weekly review analysis programs, Media Monitor. So let's look at the race itself.
It's just becoming a personality contest where people just want somebody to guard their own vested interest. And I feel that the country is at a point now where we need some sort of change.
It is ANC policy that they will have to implement. We fairly know the direction the ANC wants to take. As a leader, you have to implement. So what was it like on the ground in Kenya? Well, the country is divided. The country is very divided.
I think within the country, for me, the one person that I criticize severely, and I'm not very happy with his approach, is Raila Odinga, with him pulling out.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
I prefer using a condom because it's much safer than the other contraceptive. As for me, I would prefer condoms because what is this morning after pills? I don't really trust them because they say on the way they write the information, they say sometimes it's not 100% proven that it can prevent a pregnancy. So now at least a condom is 99%, so I prefer a condom more than morning after pills.
I prefer using condoms because condom is the only contraception that prevents HIV and also prevents pregnancy, so it prevents everything basically.
Well, I prefer abstaining from sex, and not doing it at all.
I prefer condom because they're so convenient, and even at school, each and every corridor there's a bunch of condoms that you can get, so I use those.
I prefer both condom and not a pill, but it's an injection because it's not safe. And I mean, if you're still at school, because can't easily, why not use both than to pop a pill in the morning and it might not even work. So yeah, let's just abstain from sex.
You can't really trust the condom, you can't really trust the pill, so just use them both. You might just trust them together.
Different views there. All right. So we're going to learn more about contraception and, prevention of pregnancy and STIs from our special guests. Let's start with the lady in the middle. This is Dr. Mpumi Simelane, who's a specialist obstetrician and gynecologist, but she's also the district clinical specialist in the West Rand district. Welcome to Health Talk, Dr. Simelane.
Thank you so much.
All right. And closest to me, no stranger to this show, Dr. Manala Magua, who's Director for Women and Maternal Health from the National Department of Health. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Right. And last but not least, Samantha Ucho, who is Communications and Outreach Director from the Reproductive Health, or IBIS Reproductive Health. Did I get your title correct?
Correct.
And welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you so much.
All right. Let's start with you, Dr. Simelane, and let's start with the basics. And we talk contraception, we talk family planning. What do we mean by these two?
It's very often used interchangeably,
right.
But we like family planning because it is all encompassing. It's not just about the mode as in the treatment that we give to prevent pregnancy, but it's all encompassing in safe intercourse. It's all encompassing in what does it mean to plan for a family, basically. So, for example, things like child spacing, what does that mean? So family planning is all encompassing. That's why we like it. And it involves all the different methods, whether or not it involves a treatment per se, or just a practice, if I may put it that way.
We're going to come back to different methods, but in terms of appropriate use of the word family planning, looking at different ages, as it were.
Sure.
Some people will say to you, young people aren't actually thinking of families at the time. So is it appropriate for us to use the word family planning, or should we rather just use contraception?
Look, I mean, I think you can debate it, but if you think about it, even for a young person, it is planning a family if you're saying, I'm not ready yet.
Right.
That's part of the planning. It's not just about planning to have, it's also involving the planning not to have yet, the waiting part of it.
All right. Dr. Makua, we're going to be talking about, different types of contraception, but let's just get it, policy-wise from the department. What is the department's position on contraception and young females?
The departmental policy is wide range of choice, method mix. What we are saying from the department is, if you had made a decision to use any form of contraception, you need to have an information about all the others so that the decision you're taking is informed. Therefore, even if you're using this method, you need to be able to say, what if things don't go right with this method? What are my options? So you don't want the situation where you are stuck with a method, you're not happy with it, and then when you stop that method, then you end up not using anything. So that's what we are saying as a department.
And in terms of access and availability of these various methods that you spoke about?
The access, I think when you talk about access happens at a different level. It could be access in terms of the commodities. It could be access in terms of knowledge. It could be access in terms of the comfort in using the method that you have chosen. As a department, we're saying the first access is access to information about your method. Hence, that is why at the department we have developed different platforms where we give some form of information, obviously at different levels. We're trying to be age appropriate because we think about the BYs, which is more about not yet planning to have a baby. It will talk about commodities, but we'll also have a platform such as Mom Connect that you're going to be talking about earlier on, which is about if you are at the reproductive age, what then do you do in terms of child spacing and towards the end of reproductive age when you're deciding, no, I think I've made my decision, I don't have any. But access also in terms of the contraceptives is that if you know you want a commodity, we want to make our country get away from the situation where you think contraception is equivalent to injection. Contraception is not an injection. And I also want to emphasize, condom is a method of contraception.
All right, we're going to come back to that. But let me speak to Samantha for a while. Samantha, you come from what I called IBIS earlier, and I'm told, no, it's IBIS Reproductive Health. Please tell us about what this is.
Okay, so IBIS Reproductive Health is an international NGO. We've got 3 offices at the moment internationally, and what we do is research, and our research is driven by women's priorities in sexual and reproductive health. So we do research that has bold ideas. We advocate for women's access to sexual and reproductive health services and information. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of contraception, I mean, you've done quite a bit of research on that. Do you mind sharing it with us, some of the outcomes of your research project?
So the office that I'm based at here in Johannesburg, we have a campaign called the Moho Campaign, which some of our guests are a part of as implementing partners. The Moho Campaign is basically a teenage pregnancy prevention campaign where we also look at contraception and how young people perceive it, how they receive it, and how they can help us, as civil society to gain access to this, access and information, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And we work a lot with the Department of Health, basic education, as well as DSD. So in working with the government departments, we get to understand their programs. As Dr. Manala Makua mentioned, there's Mom Connect, there's BYs, there's She Conquers. So we come in as IBIS Reproductive Health and other partnering partners to see where we can fill the gaps in terms of what do young people know about contraception, how far the reach is with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to direct the question at you in terms of how far young people know about contraception. But let's first start with Dr. Simelane in terms of the different methods. Now, let's talk a little bit about different types of methods. And we're going to talk a little bit about, for each method, you know, are there issues around, you know, availability of information, attitudes, and so on. Let's start with natural methods of contraception. Can we even talk about such?
It still forms part of the curriculum, if I may put it that way.
Right.
So they are there. What does become important is not only understanding all the methods, but their efficacy. How effective are they?
Sure.
You speak about natural methods, whether it's a form of, you know, using the period or the menstrual cycle to see when you know, ovulation is happening. It's a natural method, if you can put it that way. But what we often worry about is the efficacy of that method. And so if you go back
so
to...
why worry about it? What's wrong with the efficacy?
The worry about it is, first of all, it is purely dependent on the client or the patient, if I put it that way. And it is very much dependent on their ability to track down accurately when their ovulation period is. And we know that, you know, things happen, mishaps happen. Can people really be reliable in being able to do that consistently? You know, it's one thing to be able to get it right 1 month, 2 months, but can a person be able to use that particular method consistently and therefore preventing, you know, a pregnancy or an unwanted pregnancy?
Let's try and focus a little on the youth, and let's talk about the most available or the commonly available methods of contraception for the youth.
Well, I must say, and I like what Doctor said, is that actually all the methods are available. You know, whether we're talking about, you know, from implants to injectables to IUD. Very often it's more the acceptability of the method. And yes, you know, the pill is probably, you know, one of the most common. The injectables are one of the also commonly used in our setting. But it's also quite important to bring forth the information about the use of the long-acting contraception when you start talking about, you know, intrauterine and demystifying the myths surrounding their acceptability, because that's often the issue, rather than is it okay to use or is it not okay to use, particularly when you talk about the youth.
Interesting that she brings out the myths and links up to that earlier question that I had said I'd direct at you. You know, the level of awareness and perhaps what are some of the myths that you have to deal with?
I'll answer you in demonstrating one of the key things.
Right.
This is one method that we use. And if you look at this is what we call an intrauterine device.
Right.
And if you're having this and in front of a young person, the first thing that comes to my mind, where is that thing going to go? And what is it that's going to get in there? And how am I going to live with this? And then what will happen to my partner? So those are things that build around the myths. So if you look at it, information and demonstration and showing why, what needs to be there, and actually all this and half of this will not get into a woman.
Right.
All what remains there is this piece.
So what's the level of acceptability then for intrauterine devices, as they call them?
What we found now is for intrauterine device, it's very acceptable when women or young people start to understand how it works and the convenience that comes with it.
Yeah.
The challenge is if they're not informed about it, they develop all the myths around it. And one common myth around this is that it will disappear and will not be found.
Right. Right. Please, if you have any comment, you know, you're welcome to do that. But before that, let's take Komoto on the line from Pretoria. Komoto, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would like to predict my baby.
No, Komoto, we're very sorry, but your line isn't that great. We'll try and get you back on a better line in a few minutes. But let's just carry on. Perhaps from research, you may have picked up some of the myths and some of the issues around acceptability.
One of the big ones, and I think there's a shared sort of like thing between the intrauterine device as well as the implant, because it goes inside and it sits there.
Tell us a bit about the implant. What is it and how is it used?
So the implant is a long-acting long-lasting, reversible contraception. It lasts for 3 years. It goes subdermal, basically.
Just under the skin.
Under the skin,
Right.
and it's a progesterone only, so it's only got the one type of the hormone. And I mean, in terms of convenience, efficacy is great. You know, only 1 in 100 women are likely to fall pregnant in using the implant.
Yeah.
It is not user dependent. Once you've got it,
is it suitable to all age ranges?
Yes.
Okay, all right. But maybe this is a good point for us to go for a quick break. I know we're going to have ample time to go through all of these and explain this, but unfortunately we have to go for a commercial break. Please stay with us.
At MedShield Medical Scheme, we don't just talk health, we do health.
We take an in-depth look of all your stories of the day across the world. Stay tuned to Primetime News every day from 18 hours.
Welcome back. We're talking contraception and pregnancy with my guests in studio, Dr. Mpumi Simelane, obstetrician and gynecologist and district clinical specialist from the West Rand, Dr. Ramanala Makua, Director of Women and Maternal Health from the Department of Health. And we're now joined by another special guest, Dr. Tato Chidarikire, who's Director of HIV, AIDS and STI Prevention Strategies, also from the National Department of Health. Welcome to Health Talk, Dr. Tato.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we're talking... We just started the discussion on various methods of contraception, and you know, we went through a whole lot of other issues around, you know, acceptability and so on. In the clips that we played, we spoke a lot about condoms, and I'd like us to just focus on condoms for now, insofar as they relate to, number one, prevention of pregnancy and prevention of STIs. Maybe let me give the opportunity to you, Dr. Chiradagir. Yes.
Right. So, condoms. Condoms, may I?
Sure, sure.
The Department of Health actually distributes different types of condoms. And condoms come in the form of male condoms, the one that we use for male. And we also have condoms coming in the form of female condoms, where we have what we call FC2. This is a type of female condom that has a ring. And if I may open it, it comes in this manner, in this fashion. And again, as my colleague was saying, one of the reasons that are actually a barrier for condom use is that you look at this and again you say, where is that going? How is it going to sit? How am I going to use that? Is it painful? And education, we will be able to inform you that it is not painful. It just needs to be inserted correctly. And to improve the efficacy of condoms, you have to use them consistently and correctly. And if I were just to demonstrate just a little bit with the female condom, we have the smaller ring at the bottom, we have the opening on the top. And to insert it, remember that with the anatomy of a female, it goes inside. So you basically just need to squeeze it a little bit. If I use my fist, we insert it inside the vagina, push it with a finger until it shows on the mouth of a vagina in this manner. And this is then when we continue with sexual intercourse. And then when we're done, we just twist it a little bit, pull it out, and throw it in the dustbin. We don't put it in the toilet, we throw it in the dustbin.
Right. So clearly there's issues of usage, and yes. I don't know whether we should call it compliance, as it were, amongst youth. We played a clip earlier that showed that, you know, in real life, there's various patterns of usage. There's certain barriers and so on. Perhaps, you know, you can comment on that, and of course, any of you can also, you know, comment, yeah?
Right, so if I were to talk about our South African history when it comes to condoms, you'll remember that we used to distribute as government a condom that was called Choice. You remember that? So then studies were showing that particularly young people were not necessarily using condoms the way they are supposed to be using them. We have a lot of surveillance studies that give us that information. So as a department, then we looked at it and said, okay, so why is it that we are providing these condoms high quality, free of charge, but they are not being used? So we engaged with the young people, and we actually commissioned a perception study to say what exactly is the problem, what are the barriers for use of the condom. And that gave birth to the new, not so new, Max condom that the department is now distributing. Max comes in 4 different scents and colors. And the study had said to us, young people are saying the government condom does not have a scent, does not have a color. Yeah. We would like to have variety. And that would actually assist us in terms of using the condom. And that is why now we are coming with 3 different colors and scents. It's very important to know it's not a flavor. Yeah. So you won't taste it.
But has this necessarily improved usage of condoms?
It has improved usage of condoms. We are waiting for our next survey that is going to actually assist us. But with small studies that we have conducted, particularly in universities and FETs for young people, we have actually been informed that, yes, the uptake is high, the young people are happy. So we just need to continue educating so that we also get information from the users to actually...
I think we still have Komoto on the line. Komoto, are you still there with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Your line is much clearer now. Your question, please.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know which contraceptive method is best when you are exclusive breastfeeding. And I would also like to know if it's true that when you're exclusive breastfeeding, can you have sex and then not fall pregnant?
2 excellent questions. Let me give them to Dr. Simelan. Oh, Dr. Makua, yeah?
No, I think there are 2 components in the question. I'll take one and then I'll give Dr. Zmilela one. The one thing that I want to bring across is that we have a way of finding out whether the method that you choose is safe, it's effective, but it's also not contraindicated. So there are different things in life, in your medical history, that will prohibit you from using one method. So breastfeeding is just one of them. And when you are breastfeeding, it depends on the age of your baby and what else are you doing. Earlier on, when we talked about the natural method is effective under certain conditions, which are 3 things. If your child is less than 6 months and your baby is eating only breast milk, not anything else, and you have not yet started menstruating, then you can say you are safe, you're not going to fall pregnant. But if you're doing all the 3, but over and above, you have one of the problems that are listed on this will that I'm looking at, you may be advised to change a method and use an additional method.
All right, Dr. Simelane, just the second portion of the question.
What was the second question again?
About, breastfeeding and sex, whether or not,
So absolutely, less than 6 months. And then in terms of which contraception, and this is quite important because now we're talking about the postpartum or immediately after delivery. Excuse me. Very often, in fact, we generally don't want to use the so-called combined contraceptive, the one that's got both the progesterone and the estrogen. In fact, very often, we try and gear away from using anything that's got hormonal. But the progesterone only, you can use postpartum or post-delivery, provided the baby is less than 6 months. And it doesn't have much of an effect.
So essentially, you're saying it is possible to fall pregnant after birth when you're still breastfeeding if you're not using protection or contraception?
Oh yeah, especially if there's mixed feeding and definitely.
Okay. Let's hear from our audience. I'm sure there's one or two that would like to say a thing or two or perhaps pose a question to the panel, yeah? Just say who you are and pose your question, please. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Matsidi Somkwena. I would like to ask, was the implant not being cancelled, and why don't we have a sort of women's clinic but based on contraceptive near schools and high schools?
Excellent question. Is that the only question? Can we take the second one quickly? Yeah.
My name is Lerato Sele, and my question is, why doesn't the Department of Health introduce loop contraceptive in public clinics, and what are the disadvantages of it?
Okay, two excellent questions.
Okay.
And I'm sure Dr. Makur.
Yes, let me take the first one. Your question is, why is the implant not cancelled?
Yeah.
Was it cancelled? Cancelled meaning not available? No, it's not cancelled. It's still here, and it's still available, and it's still being used.
The second question quickly.
The second question says, why are we not having contraceptive services in schools? You would remember, or outside schools, you will remember that in 2017, we just had an approval of a policy between Department of Health and Department of Education to allow us to give contraceptives at a convenient place. It could either be within the premises after the negotiation or just outside the premises. But we need to have a clear plan as to how are we going to do that. But in the near future, within this year, we'll start having a lot of schools that are going to receive contraceptives just outside the school, or some commodities such as condoms within the school premises.
Okay. Dr. Simelane, how effective are condoms in preventing pregnancies?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 9 out of 100. If I'm not mistaken. So the important thing actually bringing to the condom issue is the dual contraception, because one of the nice things we like about the condoms, it's a barrier method, so it prevents from STIs as well, which other contraceptive don't give that benefit. So what we do encourage and actually want to advocate is for a dual contraception. Whilst the condom, in terms of preventing pregnancy, especially if somebody is not using it with perfect use, you may have gaps here and there, and therefore the risk of pregnancy is higher compared to, say, for example, long-acting methods or other more reliable methods. Right. The best thing is using dual contraception.
Okay. I'm going to give you, Dr. Chiradurgira, 30 seconds in terms of, your views on condom usage and prevention of STIs. How successful have we been, or are we?
Condoms, in terms of efficacious for STIs and for HIV, they're about 98%. So they are extremely efficacious. The efficacy is very high. Only when you use it consistently and correctly, as I kept saying from the beginning. Right. And there was a question on lube. We are distributing lube in public health facilities. The quantities may not be as high as the actual condom itself, but lubrication is there. Ask for it. Yeah. If you don't see it, it should be there. It's called Max. It's also in a small container like the condom, but it's also called Max. So it is there. It's water-based, as we always say, because you can't use a condom with an oil-based lube.
Dr. Tato Charadukira, thank you so much. Time for another quick break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion on pregnancies and focus a lot more on teenage pregnancies. Please stay with us.
It's so good, nothing else can replace just your slightest embrace. And if you only would be my own for the rest of my days, I will whisper this phrase, my darling, c'est si bon.
MedShield Medical Scheme doesn't just cover you when you're ill, we'll help you stay well. If we're talking health, then let's talk seriously. MedShield, embracing our members in good health since 1968. At MedShield Medical Scheme, we don't just talk health, we do health.
A warm welcome to one of your favorite weekly review analysis programs, Media Monitor. So let's look at the race itself.
It's just becoming a personality contest where people just want somebody to guard their own vested interest. And I feel that the country is at a point now where we need some sort of change.
It is ANC policy that they will have to implement.
We fairly know the direction the ANC wants to take. As a leader, you have to implement.
So what was it like on the ground in Kenya?
Well, the country is divided. The country is very divided.
I think within the country, for me, the one person that I criticize severely, and I'm not very happy with this approach, is Raila Odinga, with him pulling out.
Stay tuned to Media Monitor and catch on analysts unpacking top stories every Sunday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back. We're talking teenage pregnancies in this segment. Of course, our show is contraception and pregnancies. And with me in studio, Dr. Mpumisi Melani, obstetrician and gynecologist, and Dr. Manala Mankua, Director, Women and Maternal Health from the Department of Health. Of course, we're back with us is Samantha Kuchwa, Communications Outreach from IBIS Reproductive Health. Now, before we start our discussion, let's take Rosina on the line from Alex. Rosina, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
We're good. How are you, Rosina?
I'm good. I'm phoning to ask about contraception.
Yes.
I'm taking a 3-month depot injection. So I'm going to a church and they're giving me fluids to clean my body. So they're telling me that those fluids are also going to clean the contraceptive. So my question is, what is the high risk of taking a 3-month depot and also taking the everyday pill?
The everyday pill. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So let me just check if my guests understood the question. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? You're saying you're taking both injection and pills. The pills for contraception.
No, I haven't taken the pill yet because I wanted an advice.
So you went to your church and your church.
Take a pill?
Let's just deal with the issue of the church. You said you were given or you're about to be given something at church that's going to clean your body, and cleaning the body means cleaning out the contraception as well. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We'll address that question a bit later. Let's take comments from the audience. If we have anybody who wants to say something. Yeah?
Oh, yes, we do.
Yeah.
My name is Cheu, Mr. White Museri from DYC and TAC.
Yeah.
I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to be very short.
Please.
I think one of the challenges we have is the access to information. Dr. Magua especially. Especially when you talk of the policy of the Department of Basic Education, to say how come the policy was passed if we are not ready for the implementation or for the rollout? Because now we are waiting, we're getting more challenges and more challenges, whereas the policy has been passed. And also the main challenge is whether the attitude of the educators, the parents, and also the community, and also the issue of youth-friendly services in our health facilities, to say how far are we and how are we going to really get to a point where we can say we're really doing it?
All right.
Okay, I will pass
All right,
it on.
let's give someone else a chance, yeah?
Yes. Okay, my name is Ricardo. So like my question is, we have a lot of male condoms. Like in the township, you'll go to every tuck shop, you'll find male condoms, but you don't find female condoms. Why are not female condoms being promoted like male condoms?
Okay, thank you so much for your questions. Okay, we have quite a few questions. Perhaps let's start with the first one, Rosina. Who would like to take that?
Let me go. One of the things that's quite important is whenever you are given whatever type of medication, if there's something extra that, whether it's from a religious background, traditional background, I think it's always important to bring it forth to the healthcare worker and say, is it okay for me to use this? Because first of all, she's not specific of what exactly have they given her. Although I don't think it would interfere with the injectable, but it's important to say before you start anything, whether it's a herbal or whatever it is, go to your healthcare worker and get information about whether it is acceptable to mix the two, because you may get side effects if you don't.
Dr. Makua, access to information, especially at schools, I think that's the way the question...
I think the question is too loaded. I'll try to remember the pieces. The first piece is say, why policy before implementation plan? That's the process of developing policy. You need to have a better way of saying, what are we saying? And then how are we going to do it? That's the process of doing it. You cannot say we do it this way and then say, what are we doing? Because otherwise we don't get focused. So that's the process. We need to get a clear directive first in the terms of a policy, and then we bring it down to say, now that the policy says access, how do we improve access? So they follow each other that way.
So do learners have access to information on reproductive health?
The learners have got access in different ways. Remember now, it's not a health issue. Teenage pregnancy is not a health issue. It's a comprehensive issue. There's a role that Department of Social Development is playing in terms of the other factors that drive young girls to become pregnant. We're talking about blessers issues, we're talking about poverty. That's their component. They're still addressing teenage pregnancy. Then we have basic education component. They're talking about, we're now developing what we call comprehensive sexuality education, meaning if you understand what is actually happening in your body, you're likely to make a better decision. Then we have a component of health to say, now that you know about this, now that you've been supported with this not to fall pregnant, exactly if the hormones are with you, what is it that you can do? Then we talk about the contraception, we're talking about drugs. So this is the component that you're asking about. Youth-friendly services, yes, I agree. I must agree that we still have a long way to go. But that's why when Sam spoke earlier on, says, we are working together with the Department of Health. We cannot do it alone. And I take you to become ambassadors to say, help us send out the information. If you are wearing a moho, I attest to moho, but how many young other people know what moho is, what it stands for, and what can it help? How can it help her? So it's a joint effort. Let's all do it.
Okay. I'm going to ask that Dr. Chiradirikira makes her way to the audience, because I'd like her to respond to the issue of availability of female condoms versus male condoms. But while she makes her way, Samantha, just take us through some of the work that you've done on teenage pregnancy, because this is really what we're talking about now.
Okay, so as Dr. Magua alluded to the Moho campaign, and you can see some of the young people in the audience are wearing some of the branding for the campaign. It was launched in 2014, as I mentioned earlier, but in doing so, we take different approaches where we try and work a lot with different people. We've got media workshops where we find that media plays a huge role in getting information out there. So we invite media representatives, we invite young people, and young people get to talk on a topic, sexual and reproductive related, where they get to speak to someone from the field. If we're talking about teenage pregnancies in schools, we have someone from the Department of Education, we have media representatives, and we have them where we can talk about stats, we can talk about the difficulties of having condoms in schools, having youth-friendly services, and also for the media to report responsibly. And it's great to have an opportunity like this where we get to speak on such shows and have these platforms so that other young people that are watching from home can hear the questions that our audience is asking and, get some answers and also call in. So media workshops, workshops in general, we get to support young people to go to conferences where they can talk about issues that they face on a daily basis and not us telling them what to do. Instead, it's the other way around, where they get to tell us what they need assistance with when it comes to sexual and reproductive health.
Right. I'm going to direct a question at you in terms of, what it is that we're doing to try and, minimize or, the issue of, teenage pregnancy. Because, clearly they tend to have a negative impact on the young pregnant girl because I don't think that it's her choice. And the impact sometimes it's quite ghastly. And the support that, a young pregnant girl gets at school isn't that great. But before that, let's take Dr. Chiradikire to answer that issue around whether or not, why is it that female condoms aren't easily available as much as male condoms?
Right. In terms of quantities, yes, the male condoms are a lot more in quantity as compared to the female condom. And we may remember that when government introduced male condoms as part of comprehensive prevention, we started with the male condoms first, and that was because the female condoms, we were still waiting for quality approvals from the World Health Organization. And when we started introducing the female condom, which was years later, we also had to educate, we had to start with certain quantities, and if we are following up the system in terms of the contract, we're going up. So they are increasing. In the next government contract that's coming, you will have twice as much in terms of quantity as compared to in the last 3 years.
All right.
So yes, that will be accompanied by education.
Thank you very much. Let's come back to that issue of teenage pregnancies, the impact and so on. Yeah.
So two key areas that we've established that are important. The first one is from the educator's side, the importance of not only understanding, teenage pregnancy from just, the person is pregnant in front of you, but what are the drivers that are out there and how can we support? Doctor spoke about social development and education. Also, the comprehensive education, I've often said, you can't talk to somebody about a pregnancy when you haven't educated them about just the normal menstrual period. What is happening when you go into puberty? Your body is changing. What are those things? So giving that information. And lastly, it's the way we give out information. Information should be suitable for the person consuming it, not so much for me as the educator per se, but it must be relevant to the person consuming it. And does it change behavior? Because very often there's a lot of information that goes out there, but it's not changing behavior. So there are the key areas where we need to target and say, how do we bring it together from the different departments, as well as saying we need the buy-in from the client, we need the buy-in from the community, because there's a lot of other things that are encompassed when you look at the community, culturally. Yeah.
Okay. Well, whether by choice or by mistake, people do fall pregnant. And the question is, how do we look after a pregnant lady? That after the break. Please stay with us.
MedShield Medical Scheme doesn't just cover you when you're ill, we'll help you stay well.
This is your midday report. Good afternoon.
I will be faithful. I assume as President of the Republic of Kenya.
Let's take a look at how African markets and currencies are performing now.
The central bankers say the success of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is just a bubble.
Breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
And in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles,
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself. No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
It is my dream that all pregnant women be registered so that we help them through their pregnancy and childbirth and further help them to live long and healthy lives. This is Mom Connect.
Having a healthy baby is a joy. Where can I get info about my pregnancy and baby? The Department of Health will send you important information. How do I do this? You must go to your nearest clinic. If you're pregnant, the nurse will register you for the Mom Connect program. Once you've signed up, you'll get important information straight to your cell phone. You'll get useful information during your pregnancy and after your child is born. This will help to keep you and your baby healthy. You will be able to ask questions. You'll be able to give your opinion on the services received at the clinic. If you're pregnant, don't wait. Go to your clinic and join Mom Connect today. *134*550#. It's free. Mom Connect.
All right, and we welcome, of course, the ambassador for Mom Connect, the program Mom Connect, Tsepiso Makwetla. Welcome to Health Talk, Tsepiso. All right, of course, we still have our two other guests, Dr. Simelane and Dr. Makua. And perhaps let's stay with you, Tsepiso, and tell us a bit more about Mom Connect and perhaps your role as an ambassador for the program.
So my role as an ambassador is pretty much, as I said, to promote maternal, newborn child health, and the program is pretty much conceptualized to reduce maternal and newborn child mortality. So now that we're in the SDG phase, we're focusing more on health of mothers, newborn children, and of course one of the things that we are targeting is teenage pregnancies, because we have a significant number of pregnant teenage mothers who also account for a significant number of maternal deaths, because as I'm sure teenagers know, that when we talk about a child having a child, it's basically because we're talking about an undeveloped body, a body that is not equipped to deal with pregnancy. And one of the highest incidents of hemorrhaging we're seeing amongst teenage mothers. So this is one of the things that we're trying to prevent by talking to young people about condom use, contraceptions. We promote dual contraception. That's why you heard Dr. Chidiakere talk about female and male condoms. But we also want to tackle the issue of behavior. I mean, with some of the projects that we've done through Soul City and Zazi, we find that especially in areas like KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, there are high pregnancy rates. And some of the things that teenagers would say is because of lack of recreational facilities, where you find young people having sex to ward off boredom. There are also a high incidence of alcohol abuse, drugs, etc., which all culminate in this high teenage pregnancies, and of course in cases which we can't avoid, mortality rates, which is what we're trying to tackle with that as well.
All right. Perhaps before we go, let me acknowledge the presence of Lynn Bluff amongst our audience. And Lynn is a registered nurse and an internationally recognized childbirth expert. And I'm going to invite a comment or two from Lynn Beth in terms of what we're discussing today. Lynn?
Hi there, good morning. I think that one of the things that is just so important when a mum is pregnant is that she needs so much antenatal education, and there's just so much that one can do with her, because one of the most important things, obviously, is that we want her to have a safe pregnancy and to have a safe and healthy baby. But I think something else that is just so important that sometimes gets overlooked is that we want mums to be able to come out of their birthing experience saying that was a really good experience. And I think there's just so much that we can still do with antenatal education in order to really educate and empower mums to have a good birthing experience, to know how to get it. And so it's really good to see that there's been some implementation of the Huggies brand mums who actually go out into the community clinics to do some education. But I think there's so much more exciting stuff that is also a great opportunity for the future.
Right. Let's come back to the department. One of the main problems that we've had over the years is the issue of child and, the maternal and child mortality. And one of the reasons was, mothers who book late for antenatal care or just don't go for antenatal care. Are we making progress?
Thanks for bringing that up. There are changes that we put in the department. The general message is things happen within the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. And if you look at what would happen, you can get things right, you can get things wrong in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. But most often, this is the time that has been ignored, and people are not even aware of it. As a department, we say, actually, when you miss your first menstruation, don't wait to prove it again. Be suspicious enough to stand up and verify. If you miss one period, stand up. If you've got a mother or sister who missed one period, let them report. Then we can verify whether you're pregnant and things can be corrected from there. So that's one thing that will help us in pregnancy. But the second thing, we also realize that when we talk about teenage pregnancy, we tend to say, if you are young and you happen to be pregnant, you don't need to choose between your education and your health. So come forth, talk to healthcare workers, make sure that they make a system for you to say you can still be catered for and you can still be educated. But lastly,
Dr. Makua, I think unfortunately we've run out of time, and I think the message is loud and clear. Let me thank all our guests, and I'm going to mention all of them by name and our studio audience. Please, thank you very much for your contribution, of course, and all the callers. And unfortunately, this is all the time we've had for our viewers at home. Remember that we're back on the screens, same time next week. And until then, please do take care.